the School of Fiction.
My name is Holly Hook, and welcome to the School of Fiction YouTube channel.
Holly, so glad to have you. One thing that I've really enjoyed about having this interview show is that I've been able to reconnect with a lot of people that I met back in the 2010s during what I call the Kindle Revolution, or maybe called the self-publishing revolution. So we met, I guess, around 2012 when we were both fairly new to the market. And I am, looking at everything that has happened in your career since then. I'm blown away. You have many series, you have beautiful covers, and I know what a high quality writer you are from the early days. So it's really my pleasure to welcome you to talk about your books and also to talk about fantasy series and fantasy tropes. So your hometown is in Michigan, right? Tell us about that.
Yep, so I live in Swartz Creek, Michigan, which is just west of Flint, which is the water crisis fame. Not much is really going on in Swartz Creek, but I suppose that's a good thing when it's boring.
I'm glad that you have a peaceful life because that is good for writers in particular.
Definitely.
Definitely, I've been thinking about this all the years. The kind of the trope of writers who are upset and agitated all the time, and just like no, the best way to be a writer is to be steadily producing, and which is
Exactly.
what you do. All right. What made you, or what was your entry point? What made you decide that writing was the career you wanted, and how did you go about getting started?
Well, I was probably 4 or 5 years old. I had this old tape recorder, and I would pick it up and I would just start talking and making up stories and recording them. I'm really embarrassed about it right now, but that's where I got my start. And then in the first grade, once I actually started to learn how to write, the teacher handed out like these little blank books that were made out of paper and wallpaper, and I would start writing stories into them. And I gradually discovered that I loved telling stories throughout school. And by the time I reached adulthood, I finally decided to get serious about it. Right around 2009, 2010, I really decided I wanted to try to get something published, and I tried agents, and they were all like, no, 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 no. And then Kindle came out, and I didn't know what that was at first. So I decided, let me just upload a Kindle book as an experiment. And that first book was Tempest. I uploaded it to some other websites as well. I uploaded it to Barnes and Noble, and it took off there. And I actually made some money, and I'm like, can I make a career out of this? And that was the start.
I remember
And
giving 5 stars to Tempest.
thank you.
That was the
Yeah.
first book that I read, and so and now there's so many books on your site now that I want to read that I'm just going to be guess drooling over it when we get there. So that's it's a was education involved in this, or you kind of went about it some other way?
I just did it. I never took any formal classes for writing. The classes I took in college were for healthcare, and I did that for many years until it just got repetitive for me, and I decided I was going to try to go for writing full time.
That's great. So I ask every fiction writer pretty much this question, and I know there are actually three answers to it, but I'm going to give you the two options, and then you'll go from there. Plotter
Okay.
or pantser.
I'm definitely more of a pantser
Mhm.
because I might get a general idea for a story and just jot it down. Like I might write a paragraph or two where I want this story to go, but the magic happens as I'm writing it. I'm like, oh, this character did this, and it's going to affect this character down the road, and this happened earlier in the story, and it's going to rear its head towards the end of the book, and somehow it all ties together in the end. I'm not entirely sure how it works.
Uh, what I would say, hearing that, and I don't know, it applies to every pantser, but based on what you're saying there, the subconscious is doing a lot of work because
I
just
do
kind of
believe, yeah,
it
I do believe
materializes.
that's the case for me. I wish I knew how it worked because people ask me, how did you make this up? And I'm like, I don't know. I just start writing it and it clicks later on in the story.
And it's the very thing. I had a scene that I was thinking about and thinking about and thinking about for, I guess, months, really. And then one day I sat down at the dining room table at our other house in the Poconos, and I just knocked it out in 40 minutes. And then it was there. How did I get it right on the first try? It's the subconscious. That's what it is. And your subconscious is working powerfully for you. I can see that. To be able to be a pantser in that way. So you're not a planter. Do you at some point say, "Hey, I've got most of it. Let me just figure out the rest"?
Exactly. I get a general idea and I just go with it and then I see what happens.
Mhm.
I mean, sometimes it takes me for a ride too. I've written endings I never originally planned, but they turned out really well.
Are you one to say, uh, "My characters forced me to do things I didn't want to do"?
Sometimes, definitely, yes. The series I'm writing right now, all the characters have so many flaws that things just keep happening, but they make sense, and it's been a really fun series to write.
I'm going to make the move over to your website now,
Okay.
because this is where we can really start to see the magic. Now, this is shophollyhooksbooks.com. Is this a good place to start?
This is an excellent place to start. This is meant to be a landing page.
Okay, great. So I see it's moving on its own, but where should we start with? This is your current series, right? Cursed Academy.
Cursed Academy is not my current series. The one I'm working on now is actually the Academy of Horrors one,
Okay, well, let's start there
right
then.
there in the middle. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so tell us about that.
So Academy of Horrors is actually a follow-up to Monster Academy. It's set in a world where there's this mysterious dark force that, if it infects people, they eventually become some type of Halloween type creature. I'm a big fan of Halloween. I had to write it. And in this world, there's also monster hunters, just like in the old monster movies. And my main character's name is Ray. She's a monster hunter from a really prestigious monster hunting family, but they're not very accepting of her because she's a girl and she wants to learn how to be a hunter. Her dad's not the best guy. The only person who believes in her is her brother. And she's on her first hunt with her brother. Her brother gets taken away by a monster that shouldn't exist. And her only shot at finding him is to break into the local monster reserve and pretend she's infected by this dark force and enroll in the academy there. So, this story is about a monster hunter undercover in a school for monsters trying to figure out the mystery of her missing brother. And it's also a slow burn romance because the brightest warlock student in the school, his name is Asher. She's going to slowly fall in love with him. They butt heads at first. So it's definitely more of a slow burn romance, and things are going to get very complicated as the series goes on.
Are warlocks monsters?
They are considered monsters. They're still technically human, but they have magic and they're considered by society to be monsters.
Okay, you said this is a follow-up. Now I'm looking here, Monster Academy, 10 books.
Yeah,
So
that series I had way too much fun writing.
same school?
It's same universe, different monster reserve because there's multiple monster reserves in the world and it's still the Halloween creatures, the mysterious dark force. The main character's name is Allie. She gets sent to a monster school. She thinks she's not infected, but it turns out she has a special connection to this dark force. She has to figure out why. And she's also in a school for monsters. And the biggest threat's not so much the monsters. There's an outside organization who hates all the monsters and actually wants to control everybody. So they just use the monsters as a scapegoat. And it's this organization that's actually closing in on them. So they have to save themselves and the world from that particular threat.
Well, I'm very clear that I would like these books, and I'm going to start picking them up now. Where would you recommend a new reader start with your work? Which series?
Usually I recommend Cursed Academy, the very first one on the page. I'm sorry it keeps scrolling like that. That's actually the start of the Monster Academy universe. So Cursed Academy takes place first. This is more Greek mythology monsters, a school for Greek mythology monsters, but these series are linked up together. And it's about a world where the Greek gods wake up in modern times and everybody distantly descended from them gets magic, but people distantly descended from monsters also become monsters. So it's still about a school for monsters, it's just more Greek mythology. And then Monster Academy takes place a dozen years later after the events of Cursed Academy. And then Academy of Horrors takes place 6 years after Monster Academy.
And then these other series that are we're scrolling to here are set in a different setting, different world.
Yeah, those are all completely separate worlds. The Nocturnal Academy and Fey Prison Academy books, those are a shared universe that I wrote with Margot Ryerkirk. I recommend that you check out her stuff as well. She's done a lot of fantasy. And those ones are definitely more new adult for a more mature audience. It's about a world where vampires enslave earthbound fae who are trapped. And Nocturnal Academy is pretty dark. There's a forbidden romance in it. Tempest was actually the first one I published right there. That's the one where a girl finds out she has a connection to hurricanes that's very terrifying, and that's a 5 book series. I've recently gone through and re-edited and done new covers for those books. So I've been pushing those a little bit more. And then Blood Magic is the start of the Supernatural's Underground universe, which is a young adult urban fantasy, PG-13 rated. And that's an 8 book series about a reluctant teen vampire who has to save the world from darkness. And the Warren Kittens one, that one catches a lot of eyeballs. That's the follow-up series to the Supernatural's Underground, but with a different character. She pairs up with the world's grumpiest cat and has to save the world from darkness.
Looks like
And
we're
then,
getting, yeah, a new adult.
yes, those, the Fey Prison Academy and Nocturnal Academy, I wouldn't sell them to kids
Yeah.
because there is some spice in there and there's some dark mature content.
Yep. The question that comes to mind here is I see the number of books that you have, which seems I do you know the exact number that are included in these images that are scrolling? It looks like
I
it's for 50 or more.
I would say I would estimate about 50 or more too.
And this is starting in 2012. So in 14 years, you produced 50 books. And the obvious question is, what's your secret?
Well, I write
How do you
full
produce it
time
at
now.
that speed and maintain the quality that I know you have?
Yeah. Well, a lot of these books I wrote years ago, and I actually went back and fixed them up a little bit to fix typos because I used to do writing sprints where before I was a full-time writer, I was working a different job. I would set my alarm in the morning, get up, set a timer, type as fast as I could for 20 minutes, and I would do that 3 times a day. And that would help me knock out a 60,000 word novel in about a month. And then I would edit it with the help of my writers group and then put it out there. Recently, I've been slowing down a little bit, trying to, be a little bit more meticulous in my writing process because I don't have to do sprints anymore. And I do feel like that is making me a better writer.
But yeah, if you're working full time, you shouldn't have to. I mean, if you're writing full time.
Yeah, I'm writing full time, so I don't have to do sprints anymore. So that means less typos and less errors.
Well, it is very impressive, and that such a substantial body of work, and also and then to so many books that are in shared universe as well. What is your process like working with your co-author? How do you go about that?
That was several years ago. I haven't co-authored in a long time now, but we did share an outline. And since she was a plotter, that's what I did. We just bounced ideas off each other and came up with an outline. So it was a little bit different for me. She would write a chapter, I would write a chapter, we would edit each other's chapters. We had an editor go through all the chapters. She hired the artist for those covers, so those were made by a different artist. And then we also bounced the audiobooks off of each other as well. We went through ACX, got the audiobooks made. Right now, we still work together when we order author copies because I do take them to events and sell them in person. So I sell whole book bundles of each one of those little series, and then we split the cost of the author copies, and then we split the profit.
That that process sounds very similar to what I did when I was co-authoring as well. The having the outline alternating chapters. So it seems to work very well, and editing each other's chapters too. So
Okay.
writing fantasy series. So leaving out even the ones that are co-authored. And you've already talked about being a pantser, and yet at the same time you have lengthy series. Well, one of them up to 10 books, which means that you do have some means of structuring and maintaining continuity. There must be some sort of planning that's going on. So talk about that. Just how, let's say that we have a viewer who wants to be. I'm going to go off of this and back to the regular again.
Okay.
All right. So a viewer is here and wants to know, say, I want to write fantasy series. Holly Hook, you obviously have a proven track record doing that. How should I go about making sure that my fantasy series coheres as I'm working on it?
I would personally recommend sticking with one or a few different characters. So far, I've only really written books with one character's main point of view, or series with one character's main point of view. The exception would be the Twisted Fairy Tale series, which is told from different characters. I would just make sure you have a really general idea of where the series is going and how it's going to end, and how you want the characters to come together at the end. What's the big, big, big problem that the characters have been trying to overcome for a long time? Make them face that problem head on at the very end so you have some sense of direction in where you're going. And I can't give advice on plotting or pantsing because I'm a pantser. So I just have a super general idea of what the main overarching problem is. Is there an evil threatening these people or what? Or so basically something like that.
Uh, if you have a lengthy series, how interested are you in having each book feel satisfying concluded at the on its own?
That's exactly, I try to have a climax for each and every book. Like maybe a secret blows up at the end of book two. Maybe they face the big bad guy at the end of book three, but the big bad guy gets away, but they find a clue as to what the bad guy's going to do next. And then so on and so on. I try to have there be some kind of revelation at the end of each book or some kind of development, which is going to actually force the story forward. Not a big fan of cliffhanger endings. Like in one of the Academy of Horrors books, Ray's been trying to save her brother and she almost saves him in one of the books, but he falls out of reach, but there's still hope of finding him later on. Things like that. I try to make sure there's definitely some kind of climax at the end of each book.
Okay. But again, a cliffhanger would be something like she's holding his hand, the hand is slipping, and then the book ends. So you're not doing
Exactly.
that.
Yeah, that'd be a literal cliffhanger. I try not to do those. I try to make it at least a little bit satisfying at the end. Make sure the main characters get at least some satisfaction out of it, even if things aren't entirely rosy.
So if you're in book one, how well can you anticipate what's going to happen in book 10?
I it's very, very, very fuzzy in book 10. It's just I know who the main antagonist is usually by the end of book one, so I have a super general idea that they're gonna face off, but I never know the details at that point. I wish I did. It usually gets clearer to me as the end gets closer and pieces start falling into place.
Did you ever think about crossing over between series?
Crossing over between series?
Like having a book that
Yeah,
has characters from different series, having an adventure together?
I did that a little bit in Monster Academy. I brought back a side character from Cursed Academy. I didn't explicitly say this person was from Cursed Academy, but if you've read both of the series, you would know who it was and why this person acted the way they did at the end of Monster Academy. So just usually little things like that. Really, I like to put little subtle things in there.
Romantasy. I've been I this didn't exist when you and I got started.
No.
Obviously, the some of the basic tropes existed in other forms. And as I started to kind of study the markets in preparation for my work, I found out that there's this new genre called romantasy. So I'd like your perspective on this. And I know you're writing about Faye. Do you consider that romantasy in particular, or what do you think of romantasy as a genre?
I haven't really gotten into romantasy myself. I'm more leaning towards Halloween, darker urban fantasy, action. So I do feel a little bit left out of that market, but I would consider Fey romantasy. If I've got Fey Prison Academy on a table, or if I'm talking about it, I pretty much just say that's romantasy because that's set in the fairy world. It's a romantic story with royalty and forced proximity, which I know are big tropes in that genre.
Mhm.
It's just right now I tend to be more focused on like YA horror fantasy. I know it's probably not a huge market, but it's what I'm very passionate about.
Mhm. I'm trying to understand because it romantasy is very tropey,
Yes.
and the books from an outsider's perspective, like my perspective, I'm just like, how would I tell one of these apart from another? I kind of don't I don't understand what is the engine that makes readers continue to pursue that.
I think it's probably the forced proximity trope.
Mhm.
The very popular trope just in romance in general. Like you're captive in a castle, forced proximity, broody guy.
Does
At least
that
that's
work in
my
real
guess.
life?
That's why it's called fantasy.
Yep,
Yeah.
definitely. Uh, now, you said we were having a discussion, kind of ramping up to the actual interview, that you like the chosen one trope. So tell us about that. How do you use that, and why do you think it resonates so well?
I think everybody wants to feel like they're a chosen one in their life because everybody's the main character in their own story. I
Mhm.
like to write about people who find out they have magical powers or there's some kind of supernatural creature, but they're not like other supernatural creatures. There's something that sets them apart. It's like in Monster Academy, Allie gets sent to a monster school, but she's not like the other students, but she has a connection to the dark force that turned her classmates into monsters, so she's the chosen one in a way. And in Cursed Academy, Giselle has unique magic. She's not descended from a god and she's not descended from a monster. She's something else entirely, and she could upset the balance of the world. Ray might be an exception just because she's a monster hunter. She's not really a chosen one, but she's still different from the other students at her academy. I like pretty much like people who can make a difference in the world. I think that's why I like the chosen one trope for whatever reason. It's just that power to make a difference, especially when you're stuck in an unfair system.
Yeah. But these characters are definitely not Mary Sue's, though.
No,
They have a hard time.
they have a hard time. They're underdogs. They have to come into their power. They have to topple a system that's been set against them.
Mhm. Do those themes resonate really well with readers today? Do they fit our zeitgeist? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I imagine that they do with quite a few readers. You feel like you just want to do something about how the world is. You're frustrated, you want things to change.
True. So let's talk marketing. Now you have, as we said, a very good website. I'm going to go back to looking at some of the other materials you have here. Here is your Instagram. So this is mainly book covers, and uh, this. And then we have, of course, your Amazon list here. So what is your primary strategy? I'm going to guess that your primary strategy is that you have a lot of readers who've been following you for years. But what else can you recommend in terms of how to access readers or how to get the message out effectively?
Well, this has been years in the making. I do a lot of cheaper books. I do a lot of box set bundles, ebooks. A lot of people pick those up and then they read one set and then they move on to buy other sets. I'm not very good at social media. I do have the Instagram. I haven't had a chance to build it up a lot because I struggle with posting on social media. I do have a newsletter. Years ago, I gave away free books in exchange for newsletter signups, and that's how I keep tabs and keep contact with a lot of readers. That's been more effective for me than any kind of posting on social media because I post something on social media and I might get 10 people might see it, and that's about it. So, mostly my newsletter being really prolific, linking all my series together. I try to brand them so You can tell that they're all from the same author. I use the same fonts for the titles that work for fantasy. Like you can see there, Cursed Academy, Monster Academy, they have similar fonts. The box sets are very similar as well. So similar types of designs just to make them easily recognizable.
Now, let's help me find the newsletter sign up here. Is it under the news tab on your website for contact?
Most of my newsletter signups are actually in my book's back matter.
Okay.
After, after somebody gets done reading a book, they come to a link where they can sign up for my newsletter, and that's how I ensure that mostly interested people sign up for it.
So my guess is was correct that a lot of your success has a lot to do with the equity you built up with readers for the last more than 10 years,
Yes.
as opposed to having an active marketing campaign that you do run with each book. I saw the pricing was very, very competitive. I was looking at that box set. You had something like 15 books for $17. That's it's amazing to be able to do that. It means you're making a very effective use of your backlist, basically.
Yes.
That's always the trick for me as a slow writer. I never had sufficient backlist, but since you are a very fast and efficient writer, you've been able to build that up well. So, looking at the various authors I've interviewed here, you're the first one who's using that system effectively. Just having quick production and while maintaining quality, you know, and being able to use things like bundles to I guess maybe to encourage people to take a chance, and then they discover that they like it and they come back.
Yeah, that's exactly what I do. Because as I said,
Mhm.
I'm terrible at running ads and I'm terrible at social media. I've run ads before and that has helped. It's just the cost adds up over time.
Are you successful in getting lots of reviews? Do they come organically, or do you have a system for setting them up?
I do have a small reviewers team that helps get the initial momentum going. I get a few reviews out of that every time I release a book. Obviously, first books get more reviews than later ones just because they're first books. And the rest, I tend to let them come in organically.
So you essentially you have a street team of people you know.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I recruited them from my newsletter list. I've had some that have been there for many years, and they've reviewed every book that I've put out.
This is interesting to me you because you entered during the Kindle Revolution and got traction then, you're able to build upon an older, and not older in terms of age, but older in terms of longevity with you, an older audience, and you haven't had to kind of attack the newer marketing methods that people coming out with books now have to do, like Book Talk, for example, which I'm going to dip my toe into, I guess, in May and June. And I'm just like, is this actually going to work, or have these methods actually already been taken over by others? So that's one thing that I'm really wondering about. I'm doing another interview tomorrow where I'm going to talk about that stuff.
Okay.
So
I
do you
have done a
have,
little bit.
yeah, do you have any other words of advice for younger writers? Anything whatsoever, younger or newer?
For newer writers, when you're writing your first book, don't worry about getting it all right the first time. Just get it done and then go back and learn and fix it. Your first book is going to be a learning experience. I wrote stuff before Tempest that was a learning experience that never saw the light of day, and that was okay. But just finish your first book. You don't have to tear it down and go back and restart a ton of times. Just get it done and then go back and fix it and learn from there.
Yeah, I'm going to second that. The earlier work that we do rarely should be published. And I do see people all the time in Facebook groups saying things like, "I'm about to finish my first book. How do I publish it?" And I just want to say, like, "Oh, child,
Not yet.
yeah, no. I mean, you might be that good, but maybe write another one first and then see."
Yeah, or join a critique group or something, and then you'll learn from there.
It's such a pleasure to connect with you in person after we just emailed back in 2012. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
The School of Fiction.